When I got to Omagh, it became clear that this was a real tragedy and a number of people had been killed.
It was an awful atrocity, no doubt about it. Something I never expected to see, in my lifetime.
Those girls in my parish that were killed at that stage should have gone on to probably meet someone, get married, probably have a family, and their families have been denied all those special times together.
I'm just saddened by what happened. As I said at the time, completely unnecessary. And who were they fighting and who were they? They're killing their own people. What a waste.
That day on the 15th of August, I was actually working in the Carton Bakery, and I was 24 at the time, and Kate had called in to see me.
So on the day we were in town shopping, I was due to get married the following Saturday.
We had what I would describe as a pleasant conversation. My parents don't always have that with young people, but I'm happy to say we had that morning. I'll never forget, Aidan turned and walked down the hallway, and he looked back for the last time and he said, "I'll not be long," and that was really the last that we seen of Aidan.
We were told to move down to the bottom of the town because the bomb scare was actually at the Omagh courthouse, and that's where we did. We walked down there.
We all got up and went up to the cordon. It was cordoned off super value, and then they came up and they said, "Well, could we move these on down to the bottom of the town?" So we all walked down to the bottom of the town.
My bags that I had in the town that day, I'd left them at her work, and I asked her, "I'm going to go on home. Could you drop my bags off to me later on?" And that was the last thing I remembered.
The explosion went off. I don't really remember very much. I have the sounds and I can hear it, but I have no real recollection or memory until I woke up 6.5 weeks later in the Royal Victoria intensive care.
When it happened, whenever I came round, didn't comprehend what had happened. All you seen was just things floating very slowly. It was quiet. To me at that time, I couldn't hear anything. There was no noise, there was nothing. So all I could take in was things were falling very slowly.
And then all of a sudden all you heard then, my ears were ringing, just this constant real ringing in my ears. And all I could hear then was the screaming, and somebody was shouting, there's another bomb, remember?
I was lying on the ground and I lifted myself up and walked over to my mum and my aunt and my cousin. I kept thinking, oh, what about the baby? I hope my baby's okay. That blast is bound to have killed her.
And I was up on the Strangford or the Irish Peninsula when I received a call to say that there was a bomb explosion in Omagh town.
I was wearing a dress that day, so when I lifted my dress up, it was then I noticed a big long silver metal had gone right through my leg from the back end to the front. And I just looked at it. I looked around me, I seen what I seen around me, which no one should ever have to see or witness. And I just put my dress over my leg.
I remember the police coming running, and they came down to me, and they checked on me and seen if I was wakened or whatever, and I just said to them, help me, and they said, we're sorry, we can't. We have to respond to those that aren't moving and aren't breathing. So, as Kate did as well, I sat there and closed my eyes, because from what we'd seen that day, which nobody should have to see.
And then my mum and me and my aunt and my cousin walked over to Dunn's. My mum's feet were very badly lacerated. She couldn't even walk, but she managed on her heels. There was blood everywhere. Got into the car, her work colleague drove us to the Tyrone County Hospital.
It's only when I opened the double doors and saw the corridor going out that I realized what it was. There were hundreds of people washing down, people on the floor, lying down, injured, broken bones, bleeding, etc. It was like a battlefield. Went into the accident emergency department. It was chaotic, because they were all coming in and barging in.
I think people were just dumbfounded. The wreckage was there for everybody to be seen. There was still things going on. The injured were still being treated. There was people at the scene. And in a normal incident where police go to a scene of a crime, you try to seal it off and protect the scene. And in this case, there were literally hundreds of people walking about through it, where the injured were being rescued, the deceased were being laid carefully to one side, and the fire service, the ambulance service and the police service were all working hand in hand together, along with a lot of civilian people. And there was still shock, a lot of shock.
So I was taken to A&E. It was so busy. It's just blood marks all over the walls, people, blood all over their clothes, people's faces crying. There's some people just standing there. I remember whenever I was being wheeled, and there's just people standing there in shock. And then you had it's just everything of every emotion and every feeling that day was there in one room.
I was taken into the emergency department, and I was sat in it. I was put on a chair in the emergency department, and the doctors and nurses, they were running around crying.
I was taken to the waiting area of A&E, and two ladies got a ultrasound machine, and they put me up in the bed and listened for a heartbeat, and it was great. We heard a heartbeat. We were never so overjoyed.
I arrived about an hour and a half after the bomb explosion, so the initial work was being done, but then I was involved in organisation with John McKinney from the council, which set up the leisure centre to deal with the families. I was then involved up at the military camp and getting a temporary mortuary set up for the number of deceased, and just an immediate follow-up till the till the atrocity.
I was the head of the emergency planning team here in Omagh. As the chief executive of the council, that was one of my roles as well, to head up the emergency planning. And that's why I was alerted when the bomb went off. Then everything just went into action. We had a part of our planning. I would have met with all the different agencies. We would have rehearsed, what would happen in a major incident. We had many incidents in this town, unfortunately. It was only minor compared to what happened on the 15th of August. So we had a centre set up in the leisure centre, and that became then the sort of focal point for everything that was happening. Like at one stage we had 1,000 people missing, by people ringing in and saying, because this was all on the TV, we put the emergency numbers. We had the numbers and all set up. That was all part of the emergency planning process. That was all set up. People started ringing up, and then we started to build a database in for people that we knew, people that maybe came into the leisure centre. Because if you weren't badly injured, we moved people to a leisure centre just for minor injuries. And then we recorded all the people who had the minor injuries. And then the people then who were more seriously injured, then they went to the hospital, Owen County Hospital. And of course, unfortunately, the people who were killed in the bomb.
Visit to the hospital was advised to go to a leisure centre, because that's where all the information was coming in about the wounded, the injured, what hospital they went to. There was a lot of information about the wounded and the injured. And I remember there was a policeman sitting at a makeshift table, and I went up to him and I said, there is a lot of information about the injured. Is there any information about the deceased? And he said, they're working on it. And
there was a real nervousness nearly from the minute we heard about it, because we knew the boys were in Omagh, but we didn't know. Our initial feeling was they were in the folk park, so we didn't know if they had actually gone in to the town. So we didn't really know whether they were caught up in it or not until sort of maybe 3 hours later, and we heard that Emmett was my brother. We heard that he was in the Aaron Hospital. So then obviously we knew that he was very seriously injured. So the boys were obviously caught up in it, and then it was just a matter of waiting. We were hearing reports that the bus had come home, and the boys were on the bus, and everybody was on the bus. So some of our family members went down to the school to meet the bus, and obviously then Sean wasn't there, Owen wasn't there, James Barker wasn't there, some of the Spanish students. So from that moment on, you really knew then that something really bad had happened, but you didn't know for sure, and then it was a waiting game until it was 6 o'clock the next morning until we actually heard.
I was asked to go into a room, and there was 2 policemen and a policewoman, and you just knew by the nature of the questions that it wasn't going to be a happy outcome. And we were then asked to go to the temporary mortuary in Lisnelly Army Camp. And then it was my turn to go in along with James, and that was probably the most difficult thing that I've ever had to do in life. And then the next most difficult thing was when I left the army camp. We lived a short distance from the army camp, and driving home, the sun was starting to come up, the day was starting to break, birds were singing in the trees. And I had to go in and tell my wife and 2 daughters that Aidan wouldn't be coming home. And even thinking today, I don't know how I'd done that.
and we just held each other and cried, and yeah, that was the beginning really of a nightmare.
I think it was just the enormity of it, and as the numbers kept mounting, the number of deceased, I went to the leisure centre, and there was a number of lists up on the walls of injured and what hospitals they were in. And as I reflect on that, and I think about families with tears shed from their eyes and absolute shock, trying to check lists to see was their loved ones on a hospital list or were they on a deceased list. And that's something that will never leave me. Seeing those families all there together and trying to deal with this tragedy.
On Thursday, Chloe was born 7 pounds 6, a healthy baby girl. So we were never so overjoyed. It was a happy time.
But without my mum and my dad and their strength and their way that they dealt with things, and I mean, my mum was amazing. Like, so one of the things she did was, so I'm obviously really bad, I've got a mask on, and I'm like really badly, not disfigured, I don't know if disfigured is the right word to use, but do you know what I mean, just the scars and the mask, and like, it must be very hard as a mother. Maybe as a mother now I kind of get it, at the time I didn't, but so she took me for a walk in the Royal after I'd learned how to walk again and stuff at visiting time. So I would get used to people taking a second look at me. Now that's an incredible, powerful statement to make. As hard as it was really hard. It was really hard on her, and it was hard on everybody. But when I come out here, then it didn't bother me. Do you know what I mean? So she had such an amazing hindsight, you know, what was going to happen and how she was going to handle it.
We got so many well wishes from all over the world. We got cards. Chloe got lovely hand knitted cardigans, teddy bears. She even got money from strangers. And then we were let out, and the first place we went was up to see my mum in the Royal. We took Chloe up, and we were so happy all to be together and that we were all alive and healthy.
December 1988, to save my right leg, they took bits of nerve out of both legs. I had altogether then, just before Christmas, was it around 600, just over 600 stitches. I was told that it would take 2 years to find out whether the surgery would work and I could walk, if there would be any use of it at all. But it never worked. It got to the point where my foot was behind me. So I had the right leg below knee amputation, and it was done in June 2001. And I first learned to walk with a limb then in September 2001.
Even back then, like the sense of sort of community and everybody coming together was, and I was only 12, but I still remember that, and I still remember people just going out of their way to literally do anything, whatever, anything that they could possibly do, they would do it, and it was it was unbelievable the way people came together.
I was in hospital then for about, I think it was 10 days, up to 2 weeks maybe. I was in hospital. And then, as I say, my leg was badly broken and I had a lot of shrapnel injuries. But then, as I say, got out of hospital then. But since that, I've had quite a lot of operations over the years, and still operations ahead of me. But as I say, you know, we've both come through it, you know, and you know, we're here to tell the story, really.
She applied for Liverpool, John Muir's, and she headed away 5 years ago. I thought she'd only stay 3 weeks because she's a home bird and spoilt, but no, 5 years later she's got a degree in sport nutritional sciences, and she just recently there in March graduated with a Master's of Science in Public Health. So Chloe has done really well, and I'm super proud of her.
A lot of my colleagues were very, very deeply traumatised by what they saw, what they did, and indeed in the days and the weeks afterwards. And there's just one thing springs to mind about how police officers were traumatised. And on the Sunday week after the bombing, so 8 days afterwards on the Sunday, I was at church and I got a message on my pager that there was another bomb call to Omagh. And the caller had used the same code word and the same location. Bomb at Omagh Courthouse, and the code word given was Martha Pope. I immediately left my place of worship and I drove up the road as quickly as I could. And by that stage the town centre had all been cleared. The local churches had all been evacuated. And I saw a young policewoman, and she was only out of the training centre. She had been at the scene of the bomb. And here a week later we were standing in George Street and she was in tears. And she said to me, "Sir, I don't think I can cope with this anymore." And I gave her a hug and got her relieved from duty as soon as I could. And that has stuck with me. And that young girl required a lot of counselling because of the way she was traumatised.
I mean, the victims, to me, the main victim, people who lost their lives, as I said earlier, to me, they are people I focused on, you know, who are gone. The people who are injured as well, over 400 injured. I mean, sometimes we tend to forget about the number who are injured. I mean, they were injured then, they're still suffering from injuries now. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the people who are left behind, the families of all the people who were bereaved, you know, bereaved families. You know, and they've been fighting for justice. And quite right, I support that. They've been fighting to see what exactly did happen. They want to know. Now we're at the stage of inquiry, as you would know, about what happened. And let's hope we get some answers. Because they will not get closure until they get answers.
We have constantly said that the people that are responsible for Omagh are the people that planned, prepared and delivered that bomb into Omagh and escaped across the border before the bomb exploded. And the police, the civilian population, people that were shopping and working in shops in Omagh, the ambulance service, the fire service, were left to pick up the pieces. And how I would describe it is that those militant Republican criminals declared war on the people of Omagh. an unsuspecting civilian population, and today that's considered a war crime.
The police on the ground received a warning that there was a bomb planted at the courthouse in Omagh. And every officer on duty that day went out and did their level best to evacuate the area and to protect life and limb. And they did so at risk to their own lives, and every officer on duty did their level best to protect the people. Unfortunately, those who planted the bomb deliberately left it far away from where the bomb warning was given. And I would have to say that with the warning that was given, it was inevitable that people were going to be killed or injured, no matter what was done by the police on the ground, because we were clearing the wrong area.
If I was to do things differently, there's many things I would have done differently. But those of us that stayed with it, have, I don't know if you would call it succeeded, but we have now got a public inquiry, which we have worked really hard for since 2001.
Things have changed, people have got on with their lives, but the underlying sadness has never really gone away. I mean, it really has affected people's lives and ruined some people's lives completely.
We all had obviously had to move on with life, and we all have our own lives now and all the rest of it, but it's just something that will always be a huge part of our family. It's never going to change.
I suppose if there's one positive coming out of the Omagh thing, it's waking up to people to the reality of why is this happening. And thankfully there's been no major serious atrocities since Omagh, but the sacrifices for many lives are just too much. The message is for politicians to get back together, to work together, make sure that nothing else can ever happen again.
Well, every year goes by, we do it in our own way and in our own, remember. There's never a day goes by that we don't remember or we don't, do something. Like it's just something that changed our life, and an experience that that's always there. So 25 years on, I suppose for me, I'm just so grateful that I've been given the second chance of life. So 25 years on, I will remember, and I will, have a prayer for those who are grieving and still struggling, but I'll also have a prayer for those that are in a positive mind, and I will remember, I will be respectful, and I will do my prayers, and I will do all that, but I'll also be thankful, very thankful.
For me personally, and for me and Kate, they took away our youth, as I should say. Like, we were only like 24, 26, like we were starting to live our lives.
Yeah.
We should have been out, doing what all young people do at that age, and they basically stopped our lives.
Over the last 25 years, there's been a different range of feelings. Feelings of disgust with how they can carry on with their lives, have their normal family day lives with their relatives and loved ones, while behind they've destroyed so many families and relatives' lives. I can't keep going on like that, so my way of thinking is they'll get there someday.
You can't but think about it, and I would like to say that as a final every day. I mean, you cannot walk from the car park to a town centre without thinking about it, and that's sad. But in one way, it's a good reminder for me. It provides that sort of quiet space, and for me, as I walk from the car park, say to a community house here, where I can do a silent prayer for people who lost their lives.
I was angry with the people who had done it, and I said so. I said, you caused a lot of misery and a lot of heartache and break, and what have you achieved? Nothing.